Hello YouTube, this is Jason again. How you doing? Hey, just thought I'd bring some interesting things to light from back when I was young. It's for the SC3000, Sega SC3000, which was real common in New Zealand. Relatively well known in Australia, but of course in those days very competitive in the market with different machines. And of course also Commodore 64, which was the most popular, but had to have a lot of money to own one of those back then. You were looking at about $1,000 roughly for a floppy disk drive and a monitor and a PC. A lot of cool games you could program, and but I couldn't afford that because I used basically mowing lawns and so forth to go out and buy a Sega SC3000, which you could use a tape deck and just a TV monitor, and it was still quite expensive. They were $299, I think they were, which was a lot of money back then. But yeah, you could just do some home basic stuff with it. But they were pretty big here in New Zealand because we had Grandstand was the company that actually marketed and sold them here. Of course, that's a pretty common name in those days because they did a lot of desktop game machines, calculator games and all those kind of things. In Australia, I think it was John Sands was the big distributor over there, and just a couple of little tidbits. The difference between the John Sands and the ones that we got in New Zealand was the John Sands. We had the red writing, and the New Zealand versions had the yellow writing. So that's basically how you told the difference between the two. Even though they were the same, they were just sort of marketed different and sold differently. So some of the information I've got here is in New Zealand we had a lot of magazines and that were sold, which I'll show you in a minute. I'm just trying to work out this double screen stuff, so just bear with me. So what we've got is here in New Zealand we had where are we? JP. We had things like this, which was the book, which Programmer's Guide could tell you how to program it, so you could do some of that stuff yourself, which was pretty cool. This here is the back of the magazine, which was published in New Zealand. You'll see down the bottom here it's got Auckland contact details. This was the ideal setup, but of course worth a lot of money. The DVD drive, floppy disk drive was about $299 or $399. The soft jelly keyboard, which was or dead flesh people call them, was about $299, and of course the hard key one was $399. The monitors were ridiculously expensive. I don't know how much they were, to be honest. A printer was about $199, and a tape deck was about $79, I think. The only things I have a dead gel keyboard and a tape recorder, legit one of the controllers. The advantage with the cassette players is they were cheap to you just buy an audio cassette and use that, but they were still a particular frequency they were recorded at. That's inside of the programmer's manual. It gave you some basic programs that you could follow through and do yourself, which was the coolest part. You could just, I was only 13 or 14 years old, and you could actually, do something with it. This is a clip out of a magazine, which I'll show you some of in a minute. It's basically the programmers section of the magazine where it actually told you how to go about and program. If you could pause it, if you've got one of these machines, you're very lucky. And that there is actually a legitimate program. The dead flesh keyboard were better, and the reason being for that being is the gel keyboard had all the cursors, asterisks and all those kind of things on it, Whereas if you bought a hard keyboard, you used to have to buy, or it came with a sheet of stickers that you'd put on it, and on that sheet would have all the cursors, asterisks, and so forth. So, even though the hard keyboard were nicer to operate, when you're actually looking for a particular key in one of the programs, like say one of these, for example, they weren't on the actual hard keys. You had to put a little sticker on the front so you could actually see it. So it did have advantages with the gel board. This is a little catalogue that came with the, if you went into a dealership, or in my case it was Farmers here in those days, which was just a clothes, apparel, gift wear store back in those days. Still going today in New Zealand. You'd get a little leaflet which would try to encourage you to buy, and of course it would show you these games which looked pretty cool back in the day. All about Grandstand, which was the main distributor of Sega SC3000s in New Zealand. It's just the back page and some of the hardware. Can I zoom that somehow? Oh yeah, there we go. Excuse me, I'll zoom it for you. Oops, CD. Yeah, we use a computer keyboard. You can see there the particular hardware, cassettes and so forth. Doesn't really tell you a lot. Again, it's just a little flyer. Tells you about the printer. It was a coloured printer, but not really coloured. I think it had like 3 colours. Then you had the tape recorder. The problem with tape recorders is quite often they did drop out data, and then of course you had to reload again. The joystick, and of course the infamous floppy disk drive. What have we got? See a keyboard. Yeah, so that's just about it. Of course you had different RAM packs or memory packs. I've got both, but they use the onboard memory as well as its own memory as well. And they try to encourage you with home friendly use computer, and educational software, which was always a sell to your parents if you could sucker them into it. That's just the cover of the leaflet that you would pick up in store. This is actually the training book to teach you how to do BASIC. I never had one of these back in the day, and of course internet wasn't available, so it was a real struggle to actually find out any of the information about how to use BASIC. It's really, really simple, but it was hard back then, and that's just the cover of it. Here, this is a bit of interesting stuff that I found actually in my paperwork, which was here in Nelson, which is where I am. There's Nelson up there. This is a club flyer. Just telling you some basic stuff, and down here it's got pricing back then. How does the pricing work? Here in New Zealand we're about, you divide it by 2 to get American dollars, so $100 New Zealand is about $50 American, so you just divide everything by 2. But of course you've got to also keep in mind that this is way back in 1983. So it just gives you some ideas of pricing, printer and so forth. But this is a general flyer, it's not specifically for Sega. It's just it's a cost sheet inside, which I think is specific to Sega. Yeah, it is. It's all specific to Sega, and some prices back in the day. Again, it's just a club flyer. This is inside the club flyer. Hardware hire list. You could hire things back in those days. And you see this as a general because it's got Amiga, C64, all those kind of things, and C60. See here, C64 disc with disc. Crikey George, it's horrific money. So you could hire it. Of course, the price, but you'd have to have intention of probably being really serious about it, because you'd probably just go and buy it. It's inside the flyer again. I don't know if it has anything constructive. It's a general flyer, so it's got C64 and Amstrad, I think it was, IBM. These were all competing against the Sega, but they were selling them as complete packages, hardware, keyboard, monitor, floppy disk drives, whereas again the Sega you could just buy the board, and I think you buy the computer and you could actually buy the tape deck, and you could pretty much do something with it straight out the gate. Just more information. Let's see, it's about the Amiga 500. Gives you some information. Again, to get American dollars, divide it by 2, and keep in mind this is 1983. Otherwise that was a bucket load of money. Yeah. That's the front of that flyer for the specifically for the Sega Club magazine. Yeah. Have a read through. Interesting stuff. Of course, someone had to type these, and then they were just, I don't even know if they could photocopy them then. Probably had to put it on automatic print and do something like that. Yeah, cool. That. About done on that one. I think we did everything. Yeah, so that's just some general stuff. So back in my day, it was the old Sega was readily available here and affordable for young people. And then the other things I've got to show, if I can just work this out, bear with me a moment. And these are some magazines which were specific to New Zealand. We had these are Sega magazines for the SC3000. You can see these online. There's a couple of people out there that actually have these all available. There's quite a few of them. It was just a club magazine really in New Zealand, but trying to be what you'd get off the shelf. Pretty cool artwork back in those days, especially when you consider it was publication of the magazine was pretty basic. That's the last one that I have of the New Zealand publications. Of course, there were a lot more of them, and inside there would be very specific programs for the SC3000. Now the magazines were specific to New Zealand, so they had a lot of club information and all that sort of thing in them. People would write in letters and programs, so it was pretty much user-driven. People writing in and giving them the best programs they come across. Then we also had, this is just the leaflet that would come with your SC3000, it's an S3000H. I used to have quite a few of these machines at different times in the past and used to just sell them on. I've kept my original, which is the dead flesh board, and I have another one as well, which neither of them go now. They're pretty hard to get going because of the capacitors and the connections. The games themselves, of course, the little connectors on them corrode. And also in New Zealand we had these magazines here which are called Input magazine. Again, Pacific to New Zealand. Pacific to New Zealand. Here's a few of them. What was different about these magazines, they were probably the only general magazines that we had. You also see the biggest sponsor is the Sega. Now the Input magazines were covered all machines. That was the VIC-20 and so forth, Z80, the Spectrum. Spectrum was huge. here, because it was again small, compact, still quite expensive. Some of these magazines highlight that as well. Actually, there we go, $3.99. I was wrong. Sorry, I thought I paid $2.99 for mine, but yeah. And that's the last one that I have anyway. Input. What year are these? This is 1984. Some of the earlier ones are 1983. And what we could find in these would be a real general selection and programs for all machines. So here we go. Sharp did one. Everyone was competing at the time. Again, these were people-driven games that you could actually just program yourself, which is great. If you're lucky enough to have one of the high-end machines, it'd be pretty hard to come by now. Acorn was a big thing back then. I'm just trying to find. Oh, yeah, there we go. That shows it very well. I don't know. Sinclair software. Yeah. Of course, there's Atari in there as well, different models. Certainly was a flood in the market. This one here's got the price of what you would have bought back in the day. The SC3000. Yeah, what have we got? EC3000 $399, basic cartridge 2 5K RAM $39.99, basic 3 A cartridge 16K RAM $110, basic 3 B cartridge 32K RAM $150, which is a lot of money. Games Kongo Bongo, N-Sub, Ferrari Hunt, they were $59.95, and Champion Tennis, Starjack, and Yotomoto Battleship was $69.95. A joystick would cost you $29.95, and a printer would cost you $399. So the printer was as dear as the actual hardware itself. Yeah, so expensive. Probably not so much. Here's some Commodore stuff. Prices you were paying for a Commodore 64. A lot more accessories. And for a base machine, you were paying $995. So you can see why the Sega was so popular. Yeah, cool. I'll do another video some other time, which will go into the Sega stuff that I've got. The SC3000, of course, got a huge collection of grandstand stuff because everything was branded with that, right from little calculator computer games to the bigger machines, desktop machines, terribly noisy. Yeah, had a special kind of technology in those days. A little tidbit is Kongo Bongo does actually have a cheat in it as well, which is level 2. We are crossing the lake of the snakes. If you go hard left, and you can jump straight from the little island to the very top of the screen and then run along the top of the screen. It's a cheat, not deliberately put in, of course, but you've got to get your timing 100% correct in doing that jump, and it's just a little bit of a fun cheat. Cheers, and if you like the video, please click like and subscribe. I appreciate your support. Thank you.